Apologies for being a bit late on the stream today. Good morning, everyone. I was messing around with some stuff about behind the scenes to make sure it all worked properly and everything, but I've been surprised at how consistent it's been. I'll say that, and then it'll start dropping frames and stuff today, won't it? So hello, welcome to another one. We're going to do budgeting today. Now, I realised, although there is one or two things I haven't covered. I mean, I remember I haven't done break-even analysis and things like that on the videos yet, which I will do. We're pretty much done with the spec, which is pretty good, isn't it? I mean, it's been a slog, hasn't it? We did a lot. We've done a hell of a lot. But that means that you've got a brilliant resource here to be able to go back to whenever you want. Say, for example, you need to do some revision. You can put me on in the background. You can watch a video on a certain topic, especially if you're a second year student going into your second year and you forgot your first year stuff. So yeah, we've been doing really well. I suppose the next question is now, once we've finally done everything, what do we go on to? So I suppose I'm thinking about maybe just starting the second year stuff and then going through some stuff, like if you're a first year, you can have a look at some second year stuff. If you're a second year, I know ultimately second years have finished now because they got the, grades and everything. But if you're going into your second year, then you can get a bit of a sneak peek on some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about in that second year as well, can't we? So I'll have a think about it anyway and see what I want to do, because the initial thought was always to cover the spec, and we're nearly there. As I said, we've got one or two little bits to tidy up, but I'm pretty happy with it. So congratulations, everyone. Well done for bearing with us. We're going to do some variance analysis today. And talk about budgeting. It's not going to take forever. It's just a recap of what variance analysis is, really, what the power of budgeting is. It's just going to be something that I wanted to do, really. The other alternative was trade unions, but it's a bit too fresh at the minute. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on in the news about trade unions and stuff, and schools and colleges and things, and it just felt a little bit too it felt a little bit too fresh to be doing, like I may inadvertently show my political values or whatever it is I'm not supposed to have as a teacher. Are there political values, trade unions? I don't know. I don't think they are. But anyway, yeah, so I thought I'd avoid the trade unions bit just for now. It's not a big pit anyway. We've already done it in class and stuff, but we might get back to it. We might not. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it when we've calmed down a little bit, once everything's a little bit more simmered down. But anyway, let's talk about budgeting. So this is budgeting, okay? So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about understanding the role of finance department. We're going to understand what is meant by budgets and their purpose, analyse the benefits and limitations of budgets, and then we're going to evaluate the use of budgets to a business and its stakeholders. Okay? So as we usually do, understand, explain, evaluate, analyse and evaluate. Okay, so what is the finance department for? Well, you've got a couple of things here. So first of all, prepare final accounts. What does that mean? That means your end of year accounts. It's what our stakeholders are interested in. What we're going to be judging our dividends off, what we're going to be judging our success rates at, really, whether we've achieved those aims and objectives we were trying to do. Next is maintain accurate records of your transactions. That's like your receipts and things, and making sure that you're all above board, making sure that everything's kosher, and making sure that you could prove that you've bought things when you can and things like that. It's really important that anything that you show that you've brought into the business is a genuine asset or a genuine liability, and that you can prove where that has come from. The amount of times that accountants and finance departments have found out fraud that's been going on is crazy, and the reason the reason that fraud has been found is because it doesn't tally up when you do your double entry accounting. It doesn't tally up with what's going on. But you think, well, how can the value of the company be so much greater than its assets? It doesn't make any sense. Where have we got the money to buy these assets from? So it's pretty interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say accounting's ever really felt interesting to me, but there is a thing called forensic accounting, and I think that might sound a little bit more interesting when you're sort of trying to find fraud and things like that. But it's never really sounded like something that's really buzzed me. Budgeting, cash flow. Excuse me. Cash flow. I feel like we've been through all my emotions with you on this stream. I've had tired, I've had annoyed, I've had happy, I've had sad. We've been through a lot together, haven't we? And you should be proud of that, because I certainly are not. Cash flow forecasting. Remember, we did that way back when. If you go right back, we talked about cash flow forecasting, what it is. In fact, I think it might have been one of the first videos we ever did. Cash flow forecasting. And break-even analysis, sourcing finance, and analysing performance. That's your ratios. If you remember, we talked about them way back when. Again, there's a video on that if you want to have a look at ratios. Without a good finance department, a business might overspend, not realise it's not got enough money to do certain things. And that can be individual departments, or it can just be a business as a whole. They might have cash flow problems. We know how important cash flow is to businesses. As I said, they're still struggling in the UK and things like that. Make less or no profit, because it's not always a given, and have difficulties gaining credit/finance. So what is a budget? Well, a budget is a financial plan covering a specific period of time, say a year. A budget will describe expected levels of expenditure. Remember, spend. It's the money that you've spent or going to spend. And revenues of a business or part of business. The budgets can be used to forecast profit levels. So budgets like this in business is the same as budgets individually, isn't it? It's the amount of money you set yourself, an amount of money that you've put to one side to do something with. So you might say, okay, well, but I hate it when you go into places like you go into like a car showroom or something like that. Someone comes over to you and says, "What's your budget?" Well, I want the best possible thing I can physically get for the cheapest possible price, please. I don't want to say, "Oh, I want to spend £10,000." No. Like, that doesn't work. That's what they want you to say, isn't it? And that really annoys me. That it's like, yeah, of course you want me to say that. You want me to say I want to spend £10,000, and then you'll give me something that's £12,000. But I want the best possible deal for the cheapest possible price, please. That's the best thing I could want. So yeah, for personally though, you might say, okay, it's an amount of money, isn't it, that's allotted to do certain things with. It could be, a phone contract. It could be to buy something. It could be, lunch money. It could be anything. It doesn't really matter at that time. But so types of budget. Okay, now the weird thing about business budgets is the fact that you can have things like revenue budgets, and it is basically just the word budget is just a plan, really. It's an allotted amount, isn't it? It's a plan of what we think we're going to be able to do. So it's a weird sort of thing to think about though, because it confused me when I started looking at it. I thought, revenue budget, what does that mean? I thought budgets were just spending money. How can we have a revenue budget? It seems counterintuitive. But revenue budgets forecast the amount of revenue a business predicts to generate over a period of time. So that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's just basically saying how it's a revenue plan would be a better word for it, because we're saying how much revenue are we going to make within a certain amount of time or within a certain period of business. Next we have. Yawning. I thought I had a good sleep last night as well. Expenditure budget, forecast of the expenditures, costs a business expects to make. That seems more reasonable, doesn't it? What budget, expenditure budget. So we don't want to go over the budget that we've thought that we're going to spend. You don't want to spend loads more than we did, or make loads more in that regard. Profit budget. If a business takes its forecasted expenditure away from its expected revenue, it can forecast its expected profit, thus produce a profit budget. And then we have functional or department budgets. Large businesses will prepare budgets on a departmental basis or in relation to business functions, so marketing, accounts, whatever it is, we give them a certain amount of money to do. Now, with this, though, the interesting thing with this is, why is it then, if we had a profit budget that said we were going to make $1 million, but we actually made $10 million, why is that not good? Okay, have a think about that a second. Why is it bad if our revenue was way higher than we ever thought it would be? Why is that bad? And it's not bad in the sense of, it could be good for the business, but it's bad in the sense that it shows that the people who have been doing your budgeting have completely dropped the ball on it. They don't know what they're talking about. They've made a real mess of it. So that's a worry, isn't it? Because you think, well, if they've made a mess on that, what else have they made a mess on? Now, in terms of these, the idea is if we can get it as specific pattern, then that's absolutely ideal, isn't it? We don't want massive variances between our actual budget and the actual final thing, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't really matter, because ultimately we want to be as on it as we can. If we knew that we were going to make a loss and we make a loss, that's better in a way, because at least we knew that we were spot on with our calculations. Really, it's never good to make a loss, but in terms of when we're talking about budgeting, it's good to be more accurate, isn't it? Gives you more faith in them. So this is the budgeting process. We establish the aims and objectives of the business. The budget should reflect these. What are we actually trying to work on at the minute? We set our budgets, then we set our functional department budgets. Remember, it sort of goes down, down, down. A bit like your aims and objectives setting. You set your corporate objectives, then you do your next objective, your next objective, your next objectives. Can be further broken down to training budgets and the like. Then we establish a procedure for monitoring budgets, conduct a variance analysis, and then we take necessary action if we need to, and we use experience and knowledge to help create following budgets. It's really important, that, isn't it, in terms of the variance analysis that comes into play here. And we're going to talk about that in a bit in more detail in a second. So, in terms of this, you can have a go at this. We're not going to spend ages on it, but usually we would do this in class. Go shopping for the following items. How much do you get? How much do you expect to bear? You can pause the stream if you want to have a go at it. Write them down in the budget one, and then I'll show you what they are. So if you want to do that, feel free to pause the thing now. Okay, these are the answers. And then basically what we do is we have a look at how close or far away you were from that thing. That's your variance, whether you were massively under or over, or did you a lot too much for it, or not enough. Okay. So prices can change. It's an important thing to remember, isn't it? Variance analysis always changes, and budgets for things like if we're talking about these in terms of raw materials, they're not always the same, especially at the minute because of external environments and things like that. We've got quotes and research should be done to check prices before setting budgets. We need to actually go and find out, don't we? They always say that to me. I'm doing a remortgage at the minute and I want to get some more money for my house. So I said, well, can I borrow some extra money? And they said, yeah, have you actually had a look at have you had some quotes to do this, or have you just going off the cuff of what you think it might be? And I said, no, I've actually had quotes. Yeah, I've had quite a few quotes. And they're, oh, okay, they feel better about it then. So are there a range of prices for the same products? Could cheaper products affect quality? Budgeting too little means less can be bought, and budgeting too much means that money can be wasted. Okay. Now, variance analysis, really important bit of the topic, this, because variance analysis is the process a business undergoes to check the actual revenues and expenditures against the budgeted ones or the forecasted ones. So what we're saying is a variance is the difference between the actual figure and the budgeted figure for revenue and expenditure. Okay, so we do the difference between what actually happened versus what you thought might happen, and we call it a variance. Now, there's two different types of variance. Favourable variances occur when the expenditure is less than expected or revenues are higher than expected. So a favourable occurrence that would result in more profit. So any favourable variance is when we say, okay, I thought it was going to cost me £200 for this thing, but it actually only cost me £100. So I've, in terms of, expenditure budget, I've said that we'd only spend 200, but it's actually only cost me 100. So that's really good because we've got a favourable variance of 100 there, haven't we? Adverse variance, though, an adverse variance occurs when the expenditure is higher than expected or revenues are lower than expected, e.g. an adverse occurrence which would lead to lower profit. So once variances have been calculated, action may be needed to taken to solve or reduce that problem. So we can do this. We can have a look at it. And if it's way off, then we need to adjust our expectations, don't we? We need to be adjusting what we're telling our stakeholders. We need to be adjusting what we're telling our, shareholders. We need to be telling our employees and the like and things like this. Because it will affect profit levels, whether positively or negatively. It's full of yawns today. This is the yawning stream. It's like I'm doing it dead late night when I'm not. Anyway, so are we doing it positively? Are we doing it negatively? That's the main thing that you need to be thinking about this. So is it better than we thought it was, or is it going to be worse than we thought it would be? And not just thought it would be, but we have it off the, what we figured out in sense of, what we've used the data to do it. We don't just do it off the cuff. Okay, so have a go at this. Pause the stream if you've not had a go at variance analysis before. Please have a go at this. All I want you to do is I want you to work out these ones at the bottom. Let's have a go. I'll show you. I want you to work out these. And then variances is the difference between the budget and the actual. Okay. And then favourable or adverse, is it better than we thought or is it worse than we thought? You'll have to figure it out from sales. If we budgeted 20,000, we actually made 15,000, then we got a variance of 5,000. Is it favourable or adverse? Well, we thought we were going to make 20,000. We actually only made 15,000. So that's not good. Okay, so that's adverse, isn't it? Whereas if we were to do the same here, budgeting of 4,000, then we have, but we thought we were going to spend 4,000, but we actually only spend 3,500. That's a variance of 500, but that's favourable because that was a cost and that was that was a revenue, wasn't it? Okay, do you see how it works? Okay, so I'll show you the answers. Okay. Recommended actions for these. This is the kind of thing you'll do in the exam when they say, what do you think we should do? What can we see? It's been a lot more expensive to do things than we thought. Sorry, I said that wrong at the start, didn't I? I thought it was the other way around. We budgeted 20,000, we actually made 15,000, so that's bad. For this one, yeah, I made it the wrong way around, didn't I? See, that's what happens sometimes. You do make it the wrong way around. Anyway, utilities, adverse, total expenditure. Where's the big? Is there a big thing here? I'd say if there was any actions, I'd say what's significant? Labour is significant, isn't it? So it's twice as much as we thought it was. So maybe we could make some people redundant. Maybe we could reduce training or something. There's not loads you could do to this, really. Adjust your sales expectations slightly. Raw materials were slightly more expensive, but not hugely. But yeah, if you look at down here, if you look at the profit level, then people are going to be pretty upset about that, aren't they? If you think you're going to make £12,500, but you actually only end up making 6,950, that's significant, isn't it? Okay, so what could cause favourable variances in the following? Sales revenue, raw materials, labour, utilities. So what could cause favourable variance? So what could happen to make these stuff better? Well, sales revenue, we could just sell more than we thought we were going to. So a trend could come out, something like that, and just happen to do it. Or a competitor usually could do something. Some kind of celebrity might do something, that makes people want this product. Raw materials, there might be if there's you could get economies of scale, or you might be able to get a good deal on it, or you might see someone going bust and they have to sell the stock or something like that. For labour, we might actually be able to pay people slightly less than we thought we were going to, or we might be able to salary them rather than hourly pay them. That might be a way of actually getting favourable variances. I suppose that's not really a variance, but it's more of a how can we reduce the cost, isn't it? For labour, if you think of this, we might just not have needed as many. So if we improve efficiencies for the labour we do have, we might be able to reduce that on there. Utilities, we might just be able to get a better deal on them. There isn't going to be much in that, or be better, So in terms of if you set that you're going to spend £1,000 on utilities, but then you introduce something in the business to actually reduce the amount of utilities you're using, so turn lights off when you're not using them, blah blah blah, then that could do it, couldn't it? What could cause adverse variances for the following? Sales revenue, we don't sell as much as we thought we were going to. There's some kind of massive what's it called, like external influence that makes a big difference. Stock, some kind of issue with creation of it. If you're reselling stock, if you're getting it from abroad, maybe some issue between getting it here and something like that. Transport, labour. We might have needed more labour than we thought we were going to, or we hadn't allotted amount of people who we thought we were going to, or the amount that we were going to have to pay them. Perhaps if there was a lot of employment in the UK at the time, so if employment was very high, then it might be quite difficult to get people, so you might have to pay them slightly more. Rent as well, what could cause it? So if there's a rent increase, or if you hadn't really allotted for something with the rent, sometimes there are ground charges to pay and things like that. So maybe things which are connected to the rent which you hadn't really considered potentially. So why should a business set a budget? Well, the main purpose of setting budgets is to limit overspending, maximise profit, ensure sufficient cash flow, okay? So the main thing is just, let's be sensible about it. Let's know where we're going with it. Let's pre-think how much we're going to spend on this. We don't just want to be going crazy with it and just spending whatever we want, do we? Okay. So what if a business didn't budget properly? Well, with this one, you can do some really good AO3 practice, and what you can do is you can say, look, like things like this, overspending leads to, what does it lead to? So overspending leads to decreases in revenue, doesn't it? Because sorry, or rather increases in costs. So if it increases in costs, then it doesn't matter what your revenue is. It's going to reduce your profit, isn't it? So overspending leads to increase in costs. Increase in costs leads to lower profit. Lower profit leads to disgruntled stakeholders in a lot of regard, doesn't it? Because especially shareholders, because it might lead to lower dividends, which might lead to dissatisfied people, which might lead to them pulling money out of the business. So you don't have to do that you don't have to go into that much detail in an exam question. You don't have to give me that leads to that, leads to that, leads to that, leads to that. But it is something that you can do where you can give me 2 or 3 little steps and make sure that you write them into a paragraph. That'd be nice. So reduced profits lead to have poor cash flow. Therefore, so in terms of this one, so if we said if budgets were not used, we could have poor cash flow. If we have poor cash flow, that means that we might not be able to buy the raw materials we need to. If we can't buy the raw materials we need to, then we can't satisfy demand. If we can't satisfy demand, then our customers won't be satisfied with us. They might go to an alternative. So therefore, we're losing reputation. We're losing for things like that. And we'd have to look at the consequence of that. Can you see how it works? So it's just, I know that there's some students who still struggle with AO3. It's not a massive one, but it is something that people do struggle with, and it's something that you can quite easily practice. This leads to this, the effects, knock-on effects. All right. So if you know that is something that you struggle with, then feel free to have a go with that one. It's all those are nice starters. You can just do a sentence or 2 on those. Okay. Now, the last one that we've not really talked about yet is zero budgeting. And zero budgeting involves managers starting with a clean sheet. They have to justify all expenditure made. This has the following effects, okay? So instead of saying you've got £2,000 to start with, you've got zero budget, okay? And you've got to justify everything you spend. So it's kind of like the opposite, isn't it? I suppose if you give someone a budget, it kind of implies that they're going to spend that budget, doesn't it? Whereas if you don't do that, if you don't give them a budget, then you can they'll have to justify why they need it, and then you can make decisions at that point of whether it's actually a needed expense for the business, isn't it? So improved control, because senior managers see in more detail where the money is being spent. The only issue with this is what senior managers might not appreciate where the money has to be spent. I mean, you can see it at the minute, can't you? We're going to talk about the news in a bit, but you can see it at the minute in this country. You've got people who are in power who don't necessarily know. They're being told things from various sources, but they're trying to make decisions based on what information that they've got, but they aren't qualified to be dealing with that situation. There's no training in that kind of stuff and that. So when you've got, in our regard in this country at the minute, you've got scientists telling politicians what to do. In this regard, you might have people on the shop floor telling senior managers that they need to buy something because it'll improve efficiency, and then the senior manager going, oh no, well I don't think you need that, blah blah blah. Well, it doesn't really matter what you think, does it? Because you don't really know how to do this job and you're not doing the job. So, but you will be annoyed if the profit levels go down. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? You've got to satisfy those stakeholders at the time, but you've got to appreciate that it's not always as simple as doing this. There are ups and downs, aren't there? So it helps with the allocations of resources, because money is only budgeted to those who need it, and the budget holders who have greater understanding of requirements are the ones who set the levels rather than senior managers. So they can be good. It just depends on how we allot these things, who we are giving the ability to set these budgets for and release money and things like that. You're also going to get people, aren't you, who are trying to stand on a ceremony and like go, well we don't need this really because I'm trying to save money for the business and stuff like this. You always get jobs worth who love doing that, don't they? And they, can I have a pencil? No. Because I'm trying to save money or blah blah blah. And you think the strange thing is, it's like it's not even your money, it's the business's money. Why are you so bothered about it? And it's because I mean, I suppose we go back to motivation. It's because they're trying to satisfy certain things in themselves, isn't it? Whether it's social needs or something like that. It limits the tendency for budgets to increase annually with no real justification for the increase, because it's heavily researched and the managers are held accountable for it. Why do we need this? Do we need it? Can we reduce it? I think the other one is this, though. We don't want them to go down every year, just naturally either. Reduces unnecessary costs because it discourages people from spending the budget just so that they don't lose it next time. This is an important one. I've seen this happen quite a lot, where people will try and spend the rest of the budget so that they don't have it taken off them for the next year. It's important, isn't it? Because if someone told you, okay, you can have £1,000 a month, but if you don't spend £1,000 a month, then we'll have a look at what you spent and we'll give you that much next time. So you spent 900, or you can have £900 next month. Then the year after, if you knew that you were going to get reduced, you'd spend it all, wouldn't you? You'd look for any excuse to spend it. Well, I've got budget left. What should I buy with all this money? It doesn't really matter because I've got to spend the money on something. Because if I don't, then they'll take the budget off me. So what you'd be better doing is either having that trust that your employers know that they're not going to needlessly reduce your budget, or if you start with a zero budget, then as long as you can justify you need £1,000, then you're good to go, can't you? Motivates managers to look for alternative options, so it encourages them to research and think more carefully about what they're spending. The idea is it does put pressure on people, though, it's kind of like, it's not as forthcoming with actually giving you support, giving you stuff to work with in this regard. It's more of you have to fight for, to have things bought for you or whatever it is that you need. So any downsides? Yeah, I'd say, as I said, the main thing for them, I love it when it says that, don't you? Click to add text. The main thing that I'd say that is the big one for this is that you are going to get those jobs with people who are really difficult to work with if they are put in charge of a budget and they just go a bit crazy with it. You are going to get times when people, there are going to be people who are trying to make a name for themselves and things like that. There is going to be people who make it difficult and won't release money when it needs to, or maybe this misunderstanding of what we actually need to do, and trusting your subordinates that they know what they actually need for the job and things like that. And it can slow down and create some bad feeling between people, this kind of stuff. So I suppose variance analysis itself can, because ultimately people are going to be held account to what they're doing. But yeah, zero budgeting can be a bit like that, I think, sometimes. So benefits and drawbacks of budgeting overall. Read through the information. You've got them in your books, but choose one benefit and one drawback. Can you give the impacts? Can you add an evaluation point? And then, obviously, you can't share it with the person next to you unless you want to in the house. But when we're talking about evaluation points, remember, we're looking at positives and negatives. We're looking at the impact on that. We're looking at how would the company be impacted, whether you think that it would be good or bad for the business, what type of business and the significance to that type of business, big business, small business, new business, well-established business. Okay, now in terms of this, I've just put this on, and I know it looks like a lot of writing, but I've just done two little slides here at the end where it says budgets are an important management tool. They help with the financial control and coordinating of business activity. They can also assist in motivating staff. However, a poorly prepared budget is valueless. It wastes time, it can demotivate staff, and it can restrict business activities so that management cannot react to changes in the marketplace. All right, so key evaluation points. Now, I know that people struggle with AO4, but we've got to keep remembering significance. Why is it so important to us? And now, short term versus long term. If you know that you struggle with AO4, use some short term versus long term. It will force your hand to get some good AO4. So in the short term, they're extremely time consuming for management. In the short term, they're likely to be more reliable in the short term, as it's easier to predict near the future. The longer the future, the less reliable they are, as it's harder predicting into the distant future. Costs and prices are likely to change in the long term. It depends on the experience of budget. Can you see? It depends on. And we've got those external factors. So this is brilliant. Anything like this. Now, if you know that you struggle with AO4 and you think, right, well, what can I do to get better at AO4? What can I do to improve myself? I would say this would be an absolutely fantastic way of doing it. Can you create a document that has, for each topic, if you want, do it throughout the year if you want, if you can do it, but can you do a thingy that has a definition at the top and then key evaluation points in it? Short term versus long term, it depends on external factors. That would be amazing. That would be such a good revision tool for you. And then that means that when you get to that exam question, you're already pre-prepared, because you think, right, budgeting. Right, well, what is it with budgeting? Well, short-term budgeting is like this, long-term, and then you'll already know it. You've already memorized it essentially, because you'll have already done it. I don't find when I'm doing revision and things like that, if I have to relearn things, because remember, I don't remember everything about business. I just read this before we do it. You don't have to remember everything at every one time. You're in a bit of a difficult position because in an exam they say it's not a memory test, but some of it is. But in reality, you'll just have a look at it when you need it, won't you? You don't need to remember absolutely everything. So in terms of this, though, if you can go through that process, you can, that's really helpful. Rather than just reading things, actually physically getting involved with it is really helpful. And then finally, evaluating the use of budgets for a business and its stakeholders, managers, suppliers, shareholders. How's it going to affect them? Please have a go at completing these. Yeah, there we are. There was only really variance analysis I really wanted to talk about today. That's why it's been such a quick stream. It's not especially because we've done it before. We wouldn't be able to. There's lots more activities to do in the workbook and things like that. But there's no point of flogging the dead horse in terms of keep going over the same thing again and again and again just to prove a point. Now. Usually, what we do at the end of the stream, and we are going to do it, we're going to have a look at the news and have a look at that. But I'm getting so bored. It's probably me. I know it's me because I'm spending so much time in the news at the minute. I'm watching Twitter. I'm having a look at what's going on and things like that. And it's frightening what's going on at the minute. So I hope that please try not to worry. Everything will be okay. I'm sure it will. It's just the countries are going absolutely crazy with this stuff, isn't it? It's not the pandemic which has caused that much of an issue. It's this reopening thing now, and these and the people in power seeming to just make arbitrary decisions with no real thought to the stakeholders themselves or the effects of them and things like that. You've got it going on in America. So apparently, a scientist comes out and argues with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump then says, "Well, I'm president of the United States. I'll tell you." Well, what's the point of having experts then? It's this same thing again, isn't it? Let's not listen to the experts. Well, I don't want Donald Trump to tell me to put bleach into me. I'd rather an expert tell me whether something was safe or not. But who am I, eh? Who am I? So let's have a little look at these. Okay. So yeah, so it's all about coronavirus really at the minute. The pandemic has disrupted conservation work and funding with potential repercussions for years to come. But we can seize the opportunity to push for stronger action on protect the natural world. And it says the pandemic struck what was meant to be a landmark year for biodiversity, new goals and well, surely it's been good for them, has it not? There's reports coming from illegal activities occurring around the world and they're not being patrolled or monitored and accounted because of the effects of coronavirus. So I suppose that's an issue, yeah, poaching and things like that. I don't understand that with people. Is this not? Yeah, you're getting more like people come like animals sort of coming back to society a bit more. It says here. Let's have a look at this one. It says sources of the UK and US. Scores of UK and US children have been affected by a rare inflammatory disease linked to coronavirus. In a tiny number of children, it can cause serious complications, with some needing intensive care. Up to 100 children in the UK have been affected, and studies suggest the same reaction is being seen elsewhere in Europe. It's likely to be caused by a delayed immune response to the virus, which looks like Kawasaki disease. They love the brand names at the minute, don't they? Kawasaki, is that not a motorbike? In April, NHS doctors were told to look out for a rare but dangerous reaction in children, prompted by 8 children becoming ill in London, including a 14-year-old who died. Wow. They had similar symptoms, and remember, the government are saying at the minute that, oh, well, don't worry, because children aren't really affected by it. Well, most of the children had no major lung or breathing problems, although 7 were put on a ventilator to help improve heart and circulation issues. Doctors were describing it as a new phenomenon, a rare condition that mainly affects children under the age of 5. See, this is the problem, innit? This is the thing. They're not. I don't know why they're being so rash in things. But the new syndrome is also affecting older children up to the age of 16, with a minority experiencing serious complications. You've got the COVID-19 peak, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, we're seeing a peak in this new phenomenon, which makes us think that a post-infectious phenomenon means that we're likely to be something related and build up of antibodies after the infection. But he does say that the syndrome is exceptionally rare. We shouldn't stop parents letting their children exit lockdown. He said understanding more about inflammatory disease might explain why some children become very ill with COVID-19 and the majority are unaffected or asymptomatic. Children are thought to make up 1 to 2% of all cases. And the thing is with this, and this is just me, this is Mr. Businessman saying what he thinks, but I don't want to risk it. I don't care if it's 1 or 2%. That could be you. That could be someone you love. That could be someone you know. That could be the 1%. It will. Someone has to, don't they? 1 or 2% means that still, what, 2 people out of 100 are going to die. You know, that's not. It's not fair, is it? That means people are going. You know, and I hope it's no one you know, and it's damn right not going to be anyone I know, because I'm going to make sure of it. You know. Lloyds say the virus payout to be the biggest since 9/11. Insurance market Lloyds of London say it's expected coronavirus-related claims boosted cost up to 4.3 billion. Oh, that's a bit much, isn't it? Tesco boss in bonus boost after Ocado change. Dave Lewis and other executives see pay boost after high-flying Ocado is removed from bonus calculator. Okay, let's have a look at that. Tesco executives saw their pay boosted last year after online supermarket Ocado was removed from a calculator used to set bonuses. Dave Lewis, Tesco's chief executive, would have missed out on free shares worth 1.6 million if Ocado stayed on the list used to compare Rydell's success. Ocado's sharp share price meant Tesco would have underperformed in a benchmark comparing performance. Tesco said Ocado was no longer relevant as it was a technology business. Not really. Kind of. I mean, it is an autonomous production line. Fair play on that regard, but it sounds like they're just trying to find a way of giving themselves more bonuses. According to Tesco's latest annual report, Mr. Lewis would have missed out on an extra 979,000 shares if Ocado hadn't been excluded. Finance director Alan Stewart will receive shares worth about 900,000 because of the change. Brilliant. The accounts show that Mr. Lewis, due to leave in September, was paid 6.42 million in 2019, an increase of 1.6 million. Wow. I suppose the guys, though, and you know, in terms of this, they were saying it's a difficult one, isn't it? This, because you know, people don't like it when people get paid a hell of a lot of money, but he's in charge of a Tesco. You know, it's one of the most successful companies on the planet. You know, like it's one of the most dominant forces in Britain and in retail in general. So don't have too much of a go at the guy. Okay, he's on 4.6 million, but don't be jealous. You know, if you were in charge of Tesco, then you'd be entitled to it, wouldn't you? But you're not, so. Uber and Addison Lee to install protective screens. Addison Lee, what's that? I've not heard of that one. Taxi firms Addison Lee and Uber have announced new safety measures the government announced to ease lockdown. Addison Lee will fit perspex partition screens between drivers and passengers across its 4,000 vehicles next week, and Uber is paying the AA to install partitions in 400 cars in Newcastle, Sunderland and Durham, part of its initial pilot. Problem with this is I thought Uber was supposed to be for people who just wanted to use the normal cars. Then you're going to have a partition, aren't you? Oh, this is a good one. Let's look at this. Musicians and songwriters in the UK received record amount of money last year, but the loss of live music poses a major threat. Now, this is something. Ed Sheeran and Mabel, never heard of her, were among the British singer-songwriters who scored major hits in 2019. Why he plays that stupid little guitar? Anyway, the warning was issued by PRS for Music, the body that makes up 145,000 songwriters, composers and publishers. The organisation contracted an £810 million last year, but it said COVID-19 resulted in an inevitable decline in 2020 and 2021. Even though we had a record-breaking year, we know very well that we're in unprecedented, unpredictable times. Live music and public performance will be hit. And that's the point. A lot of the time, musicians, that's how they make their money. They don't make the money off you know, royalties and things like that. They make the money off performance. That's how they make any, you know, and merchandise sales at those performances. So it is going to cause them a major issue going forward. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be moving forward. They're going to have a problem. My heart bleeds for them. It's not these people that are really the issue, though. It's smaller bands and artists. I didn't want to look at that. I'm sorry. What's that saying? Yeah. This is the problem as well, isn't it? This is what happens. It says A&E visits down to a record low. The reason is because everyone's too frightened to go to hospital. We've had to go to hospital a couple of times for tests and things, and it's not a nice place to be. You know, it's not something that I was like, oh yes, please, let's go to hospital. You don't want to go and go and do that, do you? Oh, I saw this the other day as well. Look at this, right? Whoops. I saw this on Facebook, I think. BuzzFeed. Online media firm BuzzFeed is to close its UK and Australian news operations. The US company, which is set in London in 2013, said the decision had been made both for economic and strategic reasons. And then it said the staff had been furloughed. Yeah, so um, basically what it looked like was happening, because what people were complaining about online was it looked like that they were using the UK furlough program to basically just keep these people, like, they basically made these people redundant, but they don't want to say that, so that they furloughed them for a little bit and then they'll come back to them. But that's not what the furlough system was about. It's not supposed to be to help you in strategic decision making. It's supposed to be for businesses that are failing. So this is the problem, isn't it? Businesses will take advantage of situations, although this is an American company. So not to have a jab at America, but it's your fault. It's all your fault. Anyway, ladies and gents, slightly shorter one, only slightly, 42 minutes. I hope it's been useful for you. I will have a think about what we're going to do next, because as I said, we are really coming to the end of these topics now. So feel free to go back if you've missed any. I know people haven't watched everything because of numbers and things, but that's totally fine. It's no request that you look at everything. Just dip in and out when you need it. Okay. Stay safe. I will see you tomorrow at 10. We will be going through something else. And yeah, so